What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to McLean's Man Cave Week 4 analysis of college football. If this environment looks a little different from my previous videos, that's because I'm visiting my mom for a few days. Long story short, this is the first week off I basically had since about August of 2020, which is absolutely insane. It's due to my electives not lining up perfectly. So my next elective starts beginning of October. So I'll have some time off to make some videos. If you hear those chirping, those are my mom's birds right there. So basically, residency applications are in, and I got some time to talk about some football. So let's get into it because I have a lot of games to go over. It was a crazy week. I'm first going to go over my picks and predictions and see if I was right, and then I'll move on to some of the main highlights from this week because there was quite a bit of highlights. All right, let's get into it. So last week I talked about the ACC and how they basically, their chances were slim for getting into the playoff because Wake Forest and Boston College are the only two undefeated teams in the ACC. I actually predicted Virginia beating Wake Forest by 3 or 4 possessions, and I was actually wrong. Wake Forest actually is, kind of that dark horse coming out, and I'm kind of glad to see some of these, teams that usually the not too good in their conference and they start contending and things like that. So great for the Demon Deacons. They win 37-17. Moving on to Boston College versus Missouri. Now I mentioned there's another ACC team, and Missouri was favored for a few points. I said they're very even on paper, but I was going to give the slight advantage to Boston College and that they would win. They were at home. So, and that's exactly what happened. Boston College took a pretty early lead, and Missouri kind of slowly caught up. It went into overtime, and what ended up happening is Boston College won in overtime. So I was right about that. They slipped. So I said in the previous video, home field advantage, and they slip away with a win, and that's exactly what happened. Moving on to NC, let's go to more some ACC schools, but now let's go with the upset that I predicted, NC State Clemson. I mean, I think the writing was on the wall here. Everyone kind of knew that Clemson's time was up, at least for this year, and it was only a matter of time before they lost, and their offense is not producing much, and their defense is not as stout as they used to be. And NC State home field advantage is kind of like a no-brainer, So NC State ends up winning in overtime, a very close game, 27-21. That kicker, I think his name is Christopher Dunn for NC State. He missed 3 field goals, including a few chip shots. Although Clemson can try to make the argument like, oh, we went into overtime, it's an unranked team, and their kicker missed 3 field goals. In reality, you would have lost by 9 if you played a ranked team. Let's put it like that. So I'm sorry, Clemson, but I actually think that they deserve that 25 spot. Honestly, I don't even know if they should be ranked. Who did they play? How much did they score? What were the margins? It's a no-brainer. I don't think I'm not saying they're just this year they can't be ranked. I'm sorry. And I've seen a few comments on other things. I just don't like reading those comments. They're just like, oh, but what if they win out? They could definitely be back in the top 10. I'm sorry, no, because who are you playing? You're not. Maybe Boston College and Wake Forest are going to be ranked, but I still don't think you're going to beat them. First off, and if you do, maybe you'll be in the top 25, but not top 10. All right, let me just get, because I could talk about this forever. Let's move on. Georgia Vandy. I said dogs would roll, and they did, 62-0. I was a little skeptical on whether they would cover or not. I really should have just said this was a lock. I don't know. Maybe I had a little bit more faith in Vandy, this conference game and things like that. But I was right. Georgia, takes care of business, and they're showing that they're number 2 in the country. So Georgia wins 62-0, big. Penn State Villanova. At the time when I made the video, there wasn't a spread for this game. I think the spread kind of came out like on Friday or Saturday, which is strange. So Penn State wins 38-17. The spread was 29, I believe. Now, I predicted the score to be about 35-6, and around there. Now, it looks like, oh my God, Villanova scored 17, but looks are actually deceiving. This was Sean Clifford's career day in passing. He was 401 passing yards, only 4 incompletions. That one interception that didn't really count because he hit the receiver that was wide open, just sitting there, and the receiver kind of bobbled it and tried to bounce it to himself and bounce it to the defender. So I'm going to give that on the receiver's that's the receiver's fault, not really Sean Clifford's fault. And he had like 4 or 5 passing touchdowns, so a career day for Sean Clifford. And they were covering because the score was 38-3, and then Franklin put in the second string a little too early, I think. And I understand, you don't want to really run up the score. You want to get the team healthy. You want to get the depth of your team to get some practice and things like that. But I mean, just for the sake of like winning pretty and things like that, just for national rankings and stuff like that, I thought it was a little bit too soon, because as soon as they put in the second and third string in there, Villanova ended up scoring 2 touchdowns. So looks can be deceiving. Penn State definitely 100% dominated this game. Go watch the highlights. Look at the stats yourself. I mean, there's no question about it. So Penn State, now they move up to number 4. They're kind of moving up a little faster than I'd like. I mean, I love my team. I want them to be as high as possible. Just a little bit early in the season. So I think a lot of people are going to start gunning for them. I like when they're kind of like the underdog and they beat the favorite team, but we'll see what happens going on into next week against Indiana. Moving on to Notre Dame, Wisconsin. So like I mentioned, Wisconsin was favored about a touchdown. At first I was kind of going with Notre Dame. I changed my mind after looking at it. I was like, Wisconsin's defense is just crazy good. I wasn't sure, Notre Dame's run game wasn't that good. I said it really is going to have to rely on Jack Cohn, and that Wisconsin would probably kind of take it away. It was going to be a close game, and Notre Dame would bend and then break. However, I was completely wrong. I was opposite. So what ended up happening was a close game, like I mentioned. I believe it was 10-10 at halftime, and it was just such an even battle. But eventually, Wisconsin was the one that could bent and broke, and it wasn't even under the arm of Jack Cohn. I mean, Jack Cohn put in some crazy numbers. However, it was the third string quarterback. I forget his name. I'm sorry. It starts with a B, I believe, or a P. And he ended up just taking over that game. And then when Wisconsin got desperate, Mertz threw 2 pick-six in a row. So although the score was 41-13, some of those were from pick-six and stuff like that. But I mean, so this is how it comes down. If you're a Wisconsin Badger fan listening right now, I don't think you're a terrible team. I think you're one of the best defenses in the country. However, defense isn't everything. A lot of people say, oh, defense wins games, which is true to an extent. But when your offense is so non-existent, then one explosive play for the other team kind of just gives them the game. Because, I mean, you could be good all game, and then just one breakdown in coverage and an explosive play, and you're done, because then you can't really respond to that. So I would say, like, if you had like a decent offense and an amazing defense, then you're good. But in this case, when you have an amazing defense and literally nothing going on offense, then I don't know how you're going to survive. So I'm sorry, Wisconsin, but you have some major problems on offense that need to be fixed before you're ever considered to be, a real contender. All right, moving on. So I was wrong about, well, let me just say really quick. So this is the second week in a row that I went against my Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And honestly, if that's going to be the case, I guess I'll have to go against them every week if they're going to keep winning. Because it seems like when I think they're going to win by a lot, then I'm wrong and they barely escape. And then when I go against them and I say, no, they're going to lose, they win. So you know what? Next week when they play in Cincinnati, you know where my pick's going to be. All right, anyways. TCU Smu, these were 2 undefeated schools at the time. Very good, very similar on appearance, and also in terms of stats. I actually said that TCU would win and cover about 10, and I was wrong. So I'm glad that SMU, small school, that ended up winning, and I'm glad. So SMU, even though I was wrong, SMU wins 42-34. Moving on to Coastal Carolina, UMass. I know this is a lot of picks, so I'm sorry if I'm speaking fast, but there's just too much going on. So if you don't want to be sitting here for an hour, So, all right, let's just go to Coastal Carolina, UMass. Now, this one was just funny to me because, Coastal Carolina was allowing about 20 points a game on a lot of these teams that they're playing. Don't quote me on that, but, they're allowing quite a few points. And UMass, however, was like averaging about 21 points a game. Last 2 games they scored 28. So when the line was 36, I said that, UMass against the spread and that Coastal Carolina would win by about 24. And that's the complete opposite of what happened. Coastal Carolina's defense just came out of nowhere and practically shut them out. Coastal Carolina wins 53-3, and Coastal Carolina covers. So, again, I always get burned with these when you go against the spread and you take the points. Because, moving on to the next one, I was wrong about that one too. Ohio State and Akron, the line was 49.5. And I said, Ohio State doesn't look like they got that zip. Their defense is a little soft. They don't really score real fast in a hurry like they used to. And, CJ Stroud, he didn't even play, I don't think. So I was just like, wait a second, hold on. I don't think I'm going to go Akron and take the points 49.5. And I predicted the score to be either 56-10, 49-3. I was close, but, Ohio State ends up winning 59-7. So, take those 3 points from the 56, add it to the 7, and they're, I can't believe it, but they actually covered that 49.5 point spread, which is wild to me. What's actually interesting is that Akron scored first, which is really strange. I was like, oh, wow, I guess I was right about this. And then Ohio State just turned on the Jets. And, that's what they got to do eventually. I mean, Akron's not the best team. This is a school that you really need to be looking pretty on. So, moving on, Rutgers, Michigan. These were two much improved programs. But I said that Michigan wins in the Big House by at least 24. I said that the score would be about 49-21. I was actually completely wrong again. Rutgers put in a show. All right, so Michigan takes the early lead, but it's like 20-7, something like that. But Rutgers was fighting. I mean, if you look at the stats, Rutgers defense held Blake Corum, who's averaging almost like 200 yards a game rushing, and he held Blake Corum to 68 yards on only 21 rushes. That's about averaging their that's what you got to do. You got to take their star player and just take him out of the game. If you take him out of the game, he's averaging three yards a carry about, then he's a non-factor, and then you can actually have a potential to win. So I knew Greg Schiano had a game plan coming in, and that actually really, really worked. At one point it was that's the score. It was 2013, Michigan wins. At one point it was 3rd and goal. Rutgers about to tie it up, and they honestly could have tied it, but I think it was just a bad play call. That one bad play call, and then he missed the chip shot field goal. Michigan wins. Two good teams, and I'm expecting a lot of these two teams, but I gotta give a lot of credit to Rutgers on their defense, especially in this game. All right, moving on to my two locks. I was 1 for 2 this week. Louisville and Florida State. They were Louisville was favored by 1.5. I said this was a no-brainer. So Louisville wins 31-23. So I was right about that. There's not much to talk about here. I mean, Florida State is just, at this point, they're just going to have to be rebuilding for next year. They're 0-4. Not much to look forward to in the postseason. I don't even think they're going to be, going to get a bowl game this year. So tough luck for Florida State, but yep, I was right about Louisville. Moving on to Fresno State, UNLV. I mentioned how, and what's crazy is I made this video like a week ago, and then when I was watching the game on Friday night, even the announcers were saying everything I was talking about their Fresno State's points per game, UNLV's points per game, and how, Fresno State was just going to just blow it up and, take the money and run against UNLV. And the line was about 30.5. However, I was actually wrong, and this is, probably the best definition of a trap game. It's kind of like you got all this confidence, you're going to, just came off a really good win, and that's, that's the definition between momentum versus trap game. Momentum is like, all right, we got this, we're going, but we're not underestimating anybody. However, you could always take that like arrogance, like, oh yeah, we're so good, and then ends up being a trap game, because like UNLV was only averaging about 12 points a game. So UNLV was actually winning by pretty, I think about 2 possessions, and I was like, whoa, was Fresno State going to lose? But no, Fresno State comes back, and they win 38-30, but they don't cover. So they only win by 8, which was pretty shocking. I missed a few here of my predictions. I'm just going to go over them really quick. Michigan State versus Nebraska. Michigan State was favored, I think, 4.5. I said these teams were very, very evenly matched on paper. And, I mean, if you look at it, that's exactly what this game was. It was completely evenly matched, went into overtime. And I said Michigan State was probably going to win under the circumstance that they're undefeated, they have some chances to win the Big Ten or go to the playoff, and they're home. And that's exactly what happened. Michigan State and Nebraska go into overtime. Michigan State wins 23-20. So that's pretty close. not covering, but it's pretty close to what was going on. And the other upset that I try to predict, Oklahoma West Virginia, I said this was on a whim. And honestly, if you watch the game, West Virginia should have won that game. West Virginia was on the 1 yard line, practically first and goal, and then a false start and a few other mishaps, and they end up settling for a field goal, which kind of really messed things up for them offensively. And then when it's tied 13-13, West Virginia's kind of bleeding the clock trying to make the winning field goal. And first, the center, I guess he didn't snap it correctly and they called it a false start. I don't know, that was kind of a weak call, fine. But then the center messes up again and he snaps it behind the quarterback. And I'm like, all right, you're kind of just giving it to Oklahoma. So I really, you're an Oklahoma fan, oh, we won, blah, 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 good teams find ways to win. But, I mean, this was really just kind of like, they were just going to kick that field goal on you. So, so Oklahoma escapes with a win against West Virginia. So, again, it was 16-13. So that's really not really that impressive. But I know West Virginia's a good team. I just don't think that. I think Oklahoma's luck is going to run out eventually, just kind of like Clemson's. But we'll see. Now let's just get into a few highlights because we're already at about 16 minutes. When I talk about upsets, there's some upsets. First off, number 14, Iowa State loses to Baylor 31-29. Baylor's a good team. They're undefeated, but, number 14 in the country. So, I didn't watch this game, but, another ranked team falls out of potential contention. Also, Georgia Tech, UNC. This one completely caught me off guard. I was like, all right, UNC, Sam Howell, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. They had a tough loss, but I really think they're learning from it. No, Georgia Tech, they look a little different this year, and they actually beat UNC bad. And when I mean bad, I mean 45-22 bad. So that was pretty bad. And then Texas beats Texas Tech. That was a no-brainer. It was 70-35. And this is typical Big 12, no defense. And everyone's going to say, well, Georgia beat Vanderbilt 62-0. But that's not that Georgia's showing their defense. They shut out Vanderbilt. On the opposite end, when the total points are 105, 70 and 35, 105, that's literally saying to me there is no defense on each side and they're just playing catch. I don't know who finds that interesting. But, when they run up the score a lot, and they shut them out, that shows that at least one team had the better offense and they had a solid defense. So, not convinced. I know that when they play, both of them, when they play a team with, actual defense, that they're not going to be scoring that much. Moving on. So, the most improved team. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, Rutgers, Michigan, Penn State. Even though Penn State, I think that last year was a complete fluke. That didn't mean that their program was bad. It had to do with that horrible loss in the beginning of the season that the refs gave to Indiana and just kind of tumbled down. But regardless, most improved team, actually, it's Arkansas, and I can back it up. They got the win over Texas, so it shows that they actually have some defense because that Texas couldn't score 70 on them. And now they beat Texas A&M, so they're in that conference opponent. So it's like Arkansas is making noise in the Southeast Conference, and now they're going on to Athens, Georgia. They beat all the Texas teams in the West. Now they're heading east, and they're trying to make some noise. So you're going to have to stay tuned to hear my pick on number 2 Georgia versus number 8 Arkansas. Yeah, I said it, number 8. They're in the top 10. Arkansas is in the top. They moved up 8 spots, and I agree with it. Arkansas is a good team. Moving on, probably the biggest upset. I wouldn't say be the biggest upset because they're not that good. But in terms of betting, let's put it that way. Minnesota and Bowling Green. Last week, if you put $100 on Bowling Green money line and just said, yeah, Bowling Green is going to win straight up, I think your bank account would be pretty happy with an additional $10,000. But, who would have picked Bowling Green beating Minnesota in Minnesota 14-10? They just caught Minnesota sleepwalking out there. I was so, and it's so funny because I think on a parlay I had Minnesota. I was like, yeah, of course Minnesota's going to win, whatever. And that ended up ruining my parlay. I was like 6 for 7. I was like, oh my God. But, you got to give it to them, Bowling Green. They're a scrappy team. They never get enough respect. And I mean, Minnesota, what are you doing? That's just bad for the Big Ten. Like, I don't know what to tell you. That was horrible. But I mean, everyone can laugh about the Big Ten. Oh, they lost to Bowling Green. Well, guess what? Auburn basically lost to Georgia Tech, and I know people are gonna say, well, not Georgia Tech, Georgia State. Sorry, and they're gonna say, oh, good teams find a way to win, blah blah blah. Georgia State's not that good. First off, second off, you basically lost because the score was. Let's rehash the events. The score was 34-24. That was the final score. Which, oh wow, they won by 10. No, what ended up happening is, they were losing. Auburn was losing practically the whole game. It was 24-12. Time's running out. Then they get a messed up punt, a block punt, or a bad punt, and they end up scoring a touchdown on a block punt. So okay, fine, special teams. We're always talking about Tank Bigsby. Where was he? I mean, I think T. Gregg. I don't even know his first name. T. Gregg, the running back from Georgia State, almost tripled the amount of yards as Tank Bigsby. So I don't know what happened there. Anyway, so now it's 24-19, and with a minute left, Auburn 4th and 9, I believe, on the Georgia State 12. So they basically lost. If this one play didn't go their way, they would have lost 24-19. So what ended up happening is they ended up getting the 4th and 9, scoring, then going for 2 to make it 27-24, and then I believe there was a pick six after that when Georgia State was trying to tie it up. So yeah, I'm sorry, Auburn, you're on the downtrend, and I know that's probably not even good for like Penn State fans. Penn State wants to be like, oh look at this reputable team that we beat, in the whiteout. But I don't know. Auburn's a lot of talk, and yeah, there's new teams coming up like Arkansas that are gonna really give you a run for your money if you're gonna be playing like that. Moving on, then there's a few games that kind of just got me scratching my head. So like we got Pitt beating New Hampshire 77-7. Now I understand they're upset they lost. Pitt lost to Western Michigan last week, and I noticed like when they get a hard loss and then they're playing an easy team, they're like, oh, we'll show the country, we'll just beat them really really bad, and then we'll get back up there. That's not really how it happens. I mean, if it's a conference team or something like that, then yeah, if you want to win pretty, but like after losing, winning pretty doesn't really do much, but if you're like winning and then there's then you want to win pretty, but like winning 77-7, that's not really saying much. I mean, Villanova, they put up 50-60 on teams like New Hampshire and things like that. And same with Miami beating Central Connecticut 69-0. Yeah, it's a statement, but what statement are you making, really? Like I said, Villanova, they beat teams 50-60 points. So when teams like that can beat that, then you doing the same thing is kind of just like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I'm sorry, a little overrated. Whatever. I know I'm throwing some controversy out there. And yeah, I think that's going to be about it because I just talked a lot. It's 23 minutes now, and you guys either bored to death or just like, Matt, stop talking. Regardless, I love talking about this stuff. Do you agree? Do you disagree with me? I mean, we could talk about more stuff like Alabama, but I mean, there's nothing to say there. Alabama beat Southern Missouri pretty bad. Kind of same thing. But they didn't need to like score like 100 on them. They know who they are. And Oregon's still looking good. The rankings I think are very fair in my opinion. So yeah, you're gonna just have to stay tuned to hear from my picks and predictions of week 5 coming up, which I'm gonna try to get at as soon as possible. So again, what do you guys think? What were your most exciting events? If I missed my team, tell me about them. Comment hey Matt, you missed this. This is also amazing thing that happened. And I'll definitely check it out. So again, if you like the video, like it, because that means I'm kind of doing something that you guys enjoy. Consider subscribing to the channel. Put that bell notification on to make sure that you get the video while it's hot, while it's right off the press. And stay tuned for more videos. Take care, guys.